Ladies and gentlemen, self-reliance is a foundational trait that empowers individuals to take control of their own lives without waiting for permission, approval, or help from others. In a world that often emphasizes collaboration and collective effort, the ability to act independently is frequently undervalued. Yet it is precisely this trait that distinguishes those who move forward from those who remain stuck. When a person commits to relying on themselves, they begin to cultivate a kind of internal power that external circumstances cannot shake. It is not about rejecting help or community, but about not depending on them as the starting point for action. It's about understanding that your vision, goals, and progress are ultimately your responsibility. The moment someone decides to do it alone, they take ownership of their direction. They stop making excuses about who isn't supporting them or what resources they don't have. Instead, they start looking at what they do have, their time, their mind, their effort, and begin to build from there. This mindset change is transformative. You begin to realize that waiting for someone to come along and change your life is a passive and disempowering stance. Real progress comes when you stand up even when you're uncertain or scared and take the first step yourself. You start to become the architect of your future instead of a bystander in someone else's plan. Doing it alone doesn't mean you're isolated or antisocial. It means you've chosen to be responsible. It means you've stopped expecting rescue and started becoming the kind of person who solves problems. When challenges come, you don't look around for who to blame or who should fix it. You start looking inward and asking, what can I do about this? That kind of thinking shifts your energy. You become more focused, more determined, and more capable. Every step you take on your own builds more of that self-reliance. Over time, it becomes a part of your identity. You no longer need constant direction, motivation, or applause because you've built a motor inside yourself that keeps running even when no one's watching. There's also a kind of peace that comes with self-reliance. You stop being tossed around by other people's moods, opinions, or limitations. You begin to trust your own judgment. You become less needy, less reactive, and more centered. This doesn't mean you never make mistakes or feel uncertain, but it does mean you know how to recover, learn, and keep going. You become more mentally resilient because you know that no matter what, you've got yourself. That quiet confidence is something no one can give you. It has to be earned by choosing over and over again to move forward on your own terms. Ultimately, self-reliance frees you. It gives you the courage to take risks, try new things, and chase dreams without waiting for everything to be perfect. You begin to realize that you don't need anyone to let you succeed. You can choose to start right now, right where you are, with what you have. That realization is a form of power, and it is available to anyone willing to take full responsibility for their life. Doing it alone is not a last resort. It's often the beginning of discovering how capable you truly are, and once you realize that, you're unstoppable. In the quiet moments of solitude, something remarkable happens. Without the noise of the world or the constant input of other people's opinions, you begin to hear your own voice. That voice, often drowned out in the busyness of daily life, holds the key to your personal growth. When you choose to spend time alone, not out of loneliness, but out of intention, you create space to reflect, to question, to observe yourself honestly. In solitude, there's no one to impress and no social mask to wear. What remains is the raw, unfiltered version of who you are. And facing that version is where true growth begins. Many people avoid being alone because it forces them to confront their thoughts and feelings. But it's exactly that confrontation that brings about clarity. You begin to see your habits, your fears, your patterns. You become aware of the stories you tell yourself and the excuses you've been hiding behind. Solitude exposes the truth in a way that constant interaction never can. While others can offer feedback or encouragement, only you can do the deep inner work that leads to lasting change. In solitude, you're not being pulled in 100 directions. You have the chance to ask yourself what you really want, what really matters, and what you're willing to do to become the person you aspire to be. Growth in solitude also comes from the challenge it presents. When you're alone, you have to rely on yourself for motivation, direction, and resilience. There is no one to carry you through discomfort or distract you from pain. You have to sit with your struggles, and in doing so, you learn how to endure. You build emotional strength because you realize you can go through difficulty and come out stronger on the other side. You'll learn how to encourage yourself, how to think critically, and how to become resourceful. These are skills that are forged not in crowds, but in quiet rooms where you decide not to quit on yourself. Spending time alone also fosters creativity. When you are removed from constant comparison and influence, your mind has the freedom to wander and explore. You begin to come up with ideas that are uniquely yours. You find solutions you may have never seen while surrounded by distractions. Some of the greatest innovations and insights throughout history were born in solitude because uninterrupted thought allows the brain to dig deeper. You're not thinking in reaction to others, you're thinking from the core of your own experience and perspective. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of solitude is the self-trust it builds. Every time you choose to be alone and stay present with yourself, you send a message to your inner world. I am enough. You stop looking outward for validation and start finding value in who you already are. This doesn't mean you stop learning from others or engaging with the world. And that means your foundation becomes stronger so that your relationships, your decisions, and your actions come from a place of grounded self-awareness. You stop needing approval to move forward. You stop seeking constant reassurance. You begin to feel whole within yourself. In a society that often equates being alone with being incomplete, choosing solitude is a radical act, but it's one of the most empowering choices you can make. It teaches you to become your own anchor. It teaches you patience, presence, and persistence. And most importantly, it teaches you that growth isn't something you chase in the outside world. It's something you cultivate within, in the stillness when no one else is around. In that space you find not just who you are, but who you have the potential to become. Discipline is not something that can be handed to you. It is not something you can borrow from someone else, nor is it something you can outsource. It is a personal responsibility, and the moment you accept that truth is the moment your life begins to change. Discipline is the foundation of every long-term success. It is what separates people who achieve their goals from those who only talk about them. While motivation may come and go, discipline is the force that keeps you moving forward even when you don't feel like it. It is not glamorous, and it is rarely exciting, but it is always essential. There comes a point when you have to stop waiting for ideal conditions. You stop hoping for the right mood, the perfect schedule, or a burst of inspiration. None of that is reliable. What is reliable is your decision to show up and do the work even when you'd rather do something else. That decision has to come from within. No one can force you to build good habits. No one can force you to stick to a routine. It has to matter enough to you that you follow through, not because someone is watching, but because you've made a commitment to yourself. That's what real discipline looks like. It's quiet, consistent, and often invisible to the outside world. Taking personal responsibility for discipline means understanding that your future depends on your actions today. Every choice matters. Skipping one task may seem small, but it's part of a larger pattern, and when you begin to accept that every small action is shaping who you become, you start to take it more seriously. You stop blaming distractions, circumstances, or other people for your lack of progress. You recognize that the responsibility lies with you. This realization is powerful. It's not a burden. It's freedom. Because once you understand that you're in control, you no longer have to wait for anything or anyone. You can begin right now. Being disciplined doesn't mean being perfect. You will make mistakes. You will miss days. You will get off track. But the key difference is how you respond. Do you use it as an excuse to give up, or do you get back to it the next day with even more commitment? When discipline becomes personal, you stop treating failures as the end. Discipline is not about being hard on yourself. It's about being loyal to your goals, even when it's inconvenient. Over time, disciplined effort creates momentum. What was once difficult becomes routine. What once required force becomes natural. You start to trust yourself because you've proven through repeated action that you can follow through. That self-trust is one of the most valuable things you can develop. It affects every area of your life. Your work, your health, your relationships, your mindset. It gives you confidence, not because you expect everything to be easy, but because you know you're capable of doing what's necessary, no matter how you feel in the moment. No one else can give you that kind of strength. It doesn't come from books, advice, or external pressure. It comes from daily decisions, often made in quiet moments when no one else is looking. That's where discipline lives, in the small, boring, and difficult choices you make every day. And when you make those choices consistently, you build a life that reflects your values and aspirations. You stop chasing shortcuts and start building something real. Discipline is a responsibility, yes, but it is also a gift. It's the key to freedom, to growth, and to becoming the person you were meant to be. Success is often portrayed as something that must be seen, recognized, and applauded to be real. Social media and cultural narratives suggest that unless your accomplishments are visible and praised, they somehow lack value. But true success doesn't need an audience. It doesn't depend on likes, followers, or applause. It exists in the quiet places where no one else is watching, in the effort you put in when there's no recognition, in the progress you make when no one is clapping for you. The moment you stop tying your worth to external validation is the moment you begin to redefine what success really means. Doing meaningful work in silence can be more powerful than putting on a performance for others. When your motivation comes from within, your actions become more consistent, more honest, and more aligned with your purpose. You're not distracted by how things look from the outside. That kind of motivation is lasting because it's not dependent on fluctuating opinions or fleeting attention. People often wait to be seen before they start, as if visibility makes the effort more legitimate. But waiting for an audience is a trap. It delays action, and it shifts your focus from the work itself to the perception of the work. Real success is built in the shadows, in the daily grind, in the practice sessions, in the early mornings and late nights when it's just you and your goal, and it's in those moments that your character is forged. You learn what it means to be committed, to be patient, to stay the course even when no one notices. Those are the lessons that prepare you for greater challenges later on. Industry success that needs an audience to feel real is fragile. The moment the attention fades, so does the motivation. But when your sense of success is rooted in effort, discipline, and integrity, it's unshakable. You don't have to broadcast every milestone. You don't need confirmation from others to know you're on the right path. There's a quiet pride in doing the work and keeping it to yourself. It builds confidence that doesn't scream, but stands strong. When you stop chasing recognition and start focusing on results, you become more effective. You make better decisions because you're not trying to impress anyone, you're trying to improve. You're not wasting energy curating a public image. You're investing that energy into real progress. And often the people who seem the most successful aren't the loudest. They're the ones working silently, staying grounded, and letting their actions speak for them. Their achievements may not always trend, but they endure, and they lead to meaningful impact. There's also freedom in not needing an audience. You're free to experiment, to fail, to learn, and to evolve without the pressure of constant scrutiny. You're free to pursue what truly matters to you, not what looks good to others. You're free to walk your own path, even if it doesn't make sense to those watching from the sidelines. That kind of freedom allows you to stay true to yourself and to create something authentic, something that lasts. In the end, the deepest form of success is personal. It's waking up each day knowing you're doing what you said you would. It's feeling proud of your choices, your consistency, your growth. It's knowing that even if no one else sees the effort, it's still worth it. Because success, when it's real, doesn't need an audience. It just needs you to keep going. Learning from others is valuable, but there comes a point when you realize that no one can teach you more about yourself than you can. You become your best teacher not when you know everything, but when you develop the willingness to observe, question, and understand your own patterns. This isn't about rejecting advice or ignoring knowledge from the outside world. It's about recognizing that the most lasting growth happens when you begin to learn from your own experiences. Every mistake, every setback, every success becomes a lesson when you pay attention. You don't just go through things, you grow through them. The journey to becoming your best teacher starts with awareness. You begin to notice how you react under pressure, what triggers your fears, what fuels your motivation. You reflect on your failures without shame and your victories without arrogance. You ask yourself tough questions and give yourself honest answers. This process doesn't require formal instruction. It requires courage. It's much easier to blame others or seek constant guidance than to take full responsibility for your development. But when you do, something changes. You start to see every situation as a chance to learn more about who you are and who you want to become. As your own teacher, you learn to experiment. You try routines, methods, habits, and approaches, and then you step back and evaluate what works and what doesn't. You stop blindly following trends or copying others because you understand that your life is unique. What works for someone else may not work for you. And that's not a flaw, It's part of the process. Learning to teach yourself means learning to listen to your own intuition, to trust your judgment, and to make adjustments without waiting for permission. It's a skill that sharpens with time and deepens with consistency. Self-teaching also requires patience. Growth isn't always immediate, and not every lesson is obvious at first. Sometimes you fail the same test over and over until you finally recognize the pattern. That's okay. True learning is never linear. It's messy, confusing, and humbling. But when you stick with it, when you keep reflecting and refining, you develop a wisdom that no textbook or course can offer. You start to see that the challenges were never just obstacles. They were classrooms. The people who pushed your buttons, the situations that broke your heart, the setbacks that derailed your plans, all of them held lessons if you were willing to learn. Another powerful part of being your own teacher is learning how to forgive yourself. Teachers understand that students don't get everything right the first time. When you adopt that mindset toward yourself, you stop being so harsh. You begin to see your missteps not as failures, but as feedback. You adjust your path, refine your approach, and keep moving. That self-compassion doesn't make you weak, it makes you resilient. It gives you the strength to keep learning even when things get hard. Ultimately, becoming your best teacher means taking ownership of your evolution. You don't need constant outside validation because you're constantly learning, adapting, and improving from within. You build a relationship with yourself that's based on curiosity and trust. And over time, you stop looking outward for answers you already hold inside. You understand that while mentors, books, and tools are helpful, the most profound insights often come from within. When you become your best teacher, you carry your classroom with you everywhere. You're always learning, always growing, always ready for the next lesson life offers. And that mindset is what keeps you on a path of real, meaningful progress. Solitude is often misunderstood. Many people associate being alone with loneliness or weakness. But in truth, solitude is one of the most powerful environments for personal growth. It strips away distractions, filters out the noise of outside opinions, and puts you face to face with yourself. In that quiet space where there is no one to impress and nothing to hide behind, you meet your true character. And it's in that meeting where transformation begins. When you choose solitude not as an escape, but as an opportunity, you give yourself the chance to build strength from the inside out. Character isn't built in moments of ease or comfort. It's forged in challenge, in discomfort, and in moments where you must rely entirely on yourself. Solitude is one of those moments. Without the constant feedback loop of others validating or shaping your choices, you begin to make decisions based on your values rather than external pressure. You learn to stand by your principles without needing approval. That kind of independence strengthens your integrity. You do what's right because it's right, not because someone else is watching. Over time, that internal compass becomes sharper and more reliable. In solitude, you also confront the parts of yourself that are easy to avoid in company. In the silence, your fears, insecurities, and doubts rise to the surface. At first, it can be uncomfortable, even painful, to sit with those thoughts. But facing them head-on is what builds emotional resilience. You learn that you don't have to run from discomfort. You can feel it, understand it, and still move forward. That willingness to sit with your inner world, to explore it and learn from it, is a sign of true maturity. It deepens your emotional intelligence and prepares you to handle life's complexities with greater wisdom. So do die. Solitude also teaches you responsibility. When you're alone, there's no one to shift blame to. There are no distractions to justify procrastination. It becomes clear that your progress, or lack of it, is in your hands. That realization can be sobering, but it's also empowering. You begin to take ownership of your actions, your time, and your growth. You stop waiting for motivation to strike or for someone else to push you. Instead, you become your own source of discipline and drive. That self-sufficiency strengthens not just your work ethic, but your identity. Another way solitude builds character is by increasing your self-awareness. Without constant input from others, you begin to recognize your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors with greater clarity. You understand your triggers, your tendencies, and your unique rhythm. This awareness helps you navigate both internal and external challenges more skillfully. It also allows you to see where you've been holding yourself back and where you need to grow. That kind of honest self-reflection is hard to come by when you're constantly surrounded by people or distractions. Solitude also fosters humility. When you spend time alone with your thoughts, you begin to see how vast your inner world is and how much you still have to learn. You recognize both your strengths and your limitations. This balance gives you confidence without arrogance. You understand that character isn't about being perfect. It's about being real, consistent, and committed to growth, even when no one else is around to acknowledge it. Ultimately, solitude offers the space where true character can take root and thrive. It gives you the freedom to define yourself on your own terms, the strength to endure hardship without collapsing, and the clarity to see who you really are. The person who emerges from solitude is stronger, more grounded, and more capable of facing the world, not because they had someone to lean on, but because they learned how to stand on their own. That kind of character doesn't just survive in the world, it leads.